Hey, what's going down, everybody? It's your boy D-Man for Life, aka Dim Mizzle Frizzle, coming at you with the June 12th, 2014 quick hit for the new gaming order. And what this quick hit will be about, it'll be a little bit longer than usual, and it's going to be a wrap-up slash commentary of the E3 press conferences that happened on June the 9th and June the 10th, and the companies that gave those press conferences. So I'll give brief synopses of Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Ubisoft, and EA. And it's going to be based on specific criteria, like what exclusives were shown, how the conferences were presented, was there gameplay footage shown or just CG trailers, and the expected reaction that they were hoping to get. So first off, I'm going to lead off with Microsoft, since they were the first conference out. And after 2013's E3 appearance, they had a lot of work to do. And I'll be the first one to admit they fumbled the ball heavily last year. The price point of the Xbox One was $499.99, and even though I got one, that's kind of the outer edge of the breaking point of what most people would choose to spend at an entry-level launch console. And the way they forced the connect on people right out the gate was not a good look from Microsoft. And they talked about all these other things besides the games. Well, Phil Spencer straight up said this year is going to be all about the games and nothing but the games. Games, 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 to quote Phil Spencer. And he was 100% right, because that's all Microsoft showed this year, was nothing but games. And right out of the gate, they showed the latest Call of Duty game. And while I'm not necessarily a Call of Duty fan, I'll admit that the last one I actually purchased was Modern Warfare 3, even though I've played the later entries in that series sporadically over a friend's house. And I have to say, I was very impressed by this latest Call of Duty and the direction that they're going in. Will I buy it? Probably not, but I'll definitely play it more than I have the other ones over my friend's house when I'm invited to come over and play. And as always, it's gonna have the first DLC on Xbox consoles. And to pick up on something that Rich from Review Tech USA has said, he doesn't believe that timed DLC sells consoles, and I have to disagree with that, especially when the DLC window is significant like it has been for the Call of Duty games between Microsoft and Sony consoles and Nintendo consoles. It's usually about like a month and a half to 2.5 months between Microsoft and the other consoles getting that DLC, and I do know some people buy consoles based on that window. If it's a small window like a week, 2 weeks, yeah, that's not very significant. But if it's a long stretch, like longer than a month, yeah, that's pretty significant for people to want to pick up a console just to get that early DLC. So I was very impressed by that. And they jumped right into a game that I'm looking forward to. It's Microsoft exclusive, Sunset Overdrive. Man, Insomniac, that was a beautiful, beautiful game. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I think that's going to be a huge seller for Microsoft. It's an exclusive, it's not coming to any other console. And it just looks like a straight up fun game. And I think that's where a lot of these companies have lost their way. They're worried about being the most graphically impressive or having the highest fidelity of sound. And somewhere along the way, they forgot to show how fun the game is. And they hit it right out the park. They showed gameplay, and they even had a little CG trailer at the beginning of the showing, making fun of the typical standard military shooter, and I give Insomniac kudos for that. And the next game that was shown is another Microsoft exclusive. It's DLC for Dead Rising 3, for all of you who still have the game, like myself. Haven't played it in a while, but I still own it. It's going to be a 4-player mode that allows you to be various characters from the Capcom universe set in the Dead Rising universe. It's called Super Hyper Dead Rising 3 Mega Alpha. The name is just convoluted, but it's just so funny and it looks so good. And it's definitely one to get if you still have Dead Rising, so definitely look into that. Another thing that was shown at the Microsoft conference was, of course, Forza Horizon 2. This was no shock because it was announced about a week before the E3 conferences started. And what really impressed me is that it's going to have 1,000-member car clubs. It's going to be completely open world. The dynamic weather system looked wonderful. The rain, the water effects. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm a huge Forza fan. Can't wait to get my hands on that. And speaking of Forza, they dropped some DLC the day of the conference, which was earlier this week on Monday, and that was the much anticipated Nuremberg Ring for Forza 5. So if you haven't gotten the Nuremberg Ring yet, definitely recommend picking that up. So moving on, they got into some Halo news, and the big Halo news is not Halo 5 like everybody expected. Everybody knows that Halo 5 is coming out in 2015. That's no big secret. But what is coming out this holiday is Halo, the Master Chief Collection. And what that is Halo 1 through 4, Halo 1 CE Anniversary Edition. Halo 2 will also be included with an Anniversary Edition. Halo 3 and Halo 4 will be remastered and textures upgraded. It'll include 100 multiplayer maps. It'll include the original Halo 2 multiplayer. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, and that's just big news. And of course, that's going to come with the Halo 5 beta. And it's just huge, man. It's just really huge. And another thing that Microsoft announced was they did show some support for their indie games. Indie games are coming. And they didn't spend too much time on that, which I am appreciative for. So, kudos to Microsoft doing that. And I'm serious, they just came with nothing but the games. It's going to be at least 8 exclusive Xbox One games coming out this year before Christmas. So I have to give Microsoft props for sticking to nothing but the games. If you want to watch the Microsoft press conference in its entirety, I'm sure it's up on YouTube. Various game sites have it archived, like IGN, GameStop, even Microsoft themselves, so definitely check that out. And I have to admit that while it was great that Microsoft showed nothing but games, it's what they needed to do to get the fans back on track on their side. The press conference itself wasn't overwhelming, like mind-blowingly awesome. It looked great. They presented the games. They just rapid fire, go. Didn't give you a chance to breathe, but it wasn't mind-blowingly awesome, like, oh my god, I can't wait for this. But it was solid. They did what they needed to do. They're even reviving an old franchise of mine, 2 old franchises rather, that I'm looking forward to going to be coming in 2015. And one of those franchises is Phantom Dust. If you don't know what Phantom Dust is, it's a old Xbox game that debuted on the original Xbox. It's very awesome. It's backwards compatible on a 360, so if you can get a copy on eBay, it's usually like between $20 and $30 depending on who you get it from. Definitely recommend that. And another franchise they are reviving and bringing to the Xbox One is Crackdown. And if you haven't played Crackdown on the Xbox 360, definitely recommend that. Gotta pick it up. So that's it for Microsoft. I give them a solid thumbs up. Wasn't overwhelmingly mind-blowingly awesome, but they did do what they needed to do. And next I'm going to move on to I'll admit that it was very solid, though it did drag on at points. I'll address that later on, but Sony also did a very solid job. It didn't come across as very well put together as the Microsoft press conference. The director slash producer, whoever was in charge of that press conference, needs to be fired because they cut away from the games to do wide shots of the crowd at the wrong time, and that was just very frustrating. But I'm going to jump headfirst into this conference, and what they showed was very impressive. Their exclusives, they didn't come with as many as Microsoft did, but they did show their big name exclusives, and one of them was the Order 1886. On a previous New Gaming Order podcast, I expressed my opinion of it, and I'm kind of disappointed that that's the direction that they went in with the game. It looks very well made, and I'm sure it's going to sell millions upon millions of copies, but they could have did a lot more with the subject matter they chose. I'm just disappointed that Gears of War clone was the best they could do. And people say I'm just hating, but I'm not. That's just my opinion. I'm a very big steampunk fan. And I'm just disappointed that of their lack of imagination. Not the game itself, it's just the lack of imagination that was shown. That this is the best idea that they can come up with, is to do a Gears of War clone set in Victorian era England. Now, the game looked wonderful, it played wonderful, graphics are on point. They're going for a cinematic feel, which is why it's going to be 24 frames per second. And I'm not one of these graphics whores like, oh my god, it needs to be 1080p 60 frames per second. No, it's 1080p 24 frames per second for a reason. They're trying to convey a certain cinematic feel for the game, and props to them. Next game they're doing is a port of best-selling PS3 game, The Last of Us, and I'll admit I wasn't initially sold on The Last of Us before I played it, and after I played it I fell in love with the game. The fact that they're bringing that to the PlayStation 4 with added content is huge. It's very, very huge. And it's one of the few games that I can see people actually purchasing again who already own it, just to play it at that higher graphical fidelity, as well as getting that additional content. And for people who've never played it because they own a Xbox 360 who picked up a PlayStation 4, they're going to be in for a real treat. It's a huge game for Sony. And moving on to another big thing that they announced is that they're bringing the Sony Now, the PlayStation Now service is now in open beta. So I've stated my opinion on it, but it's a big thing for Sony. I don't think it's going to be viable outside of big cities unless you live super, super close to a hub, but that's another topic for another podcast altogether. Actually, we did cover it on another podcast, so if you want to go back and look at the archives and hear me rant on about that, you're more than welcome to do that. But Sony did get into, this is where the conference kind of dragged, in my opinion, because the first half hour of the Sony press the first hour, I should say, of the Sony press conference was very, very solid. They were hitting on all symbols, and with Destiny, that looked very, very great. I'm definitely getting Destiny. It's not a Sony PlayStation 4 exclusive, but it is coming with an exclusive character and exclusive mode. So if you have PlayStation 4, you're definitely gonna get that, given Bungie's pedigree on making fantastic first-person shooter games. Now, moving on to the part of the conference that I felt dragged on and on. They kind of focused a little bit too much on indie games, even though there was one game produced by it's called No Man's Sky, and I'll admit, even though it's not the type of game that I would play, it's coming out for all systems. It's coming out on Sony. It's making the console debut for the PlayStation 4 first, but it is coming out on all platforms: PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PlayStation 3, and possibly PlayStation Vita. But it looked amazing. It's got a huge exploration factor, and I just feel they focused entirely too much on indie games. E3 is supposed to be the conference anyway. The conference is supposed to be the time you bring out the heavy guns. You're supposed to bring out the muscle. This is where you want to put your best foot forward. I like indie games and all. I like the fact that they're $5, $10 efforts that are made by small teams, even individuals. And it's great that Sony is supporting them this much, to the point that they're giving a spot on the E3 stage, to the point that they are. But people are not buying a $400 console to play indie games. That should not be your main focus. Your main focus should be on your exclusives. Your main focus should be on your AAA blockbuster titles that are coming out. And while we're on the AAA blockbuster titles that are coming out, Sony doesn't have a lot of that coming out this holiday. A lot of their big titles are third-party titles that are also appearing on Xbox One and the PC. So a lot of people buy their console based on the exclusives that are coming out. And right now, Sony does not give me the reason to put down $400 this year to buy a PlayStation 4. All the stuff that I'm interested in is coming out next year in 2015, so I'll definitely be getting a PlayStation 4 in 2015. But getting back to where the conference dragged on, the same thing that Sony criticized Microsoft for doing, and a lot of people criticized Microsoft for doing last year, is what Sony focused on for the final, I'd say, 40% of the conference, which was their side services like PlayStation TV, where you can essentially buy a sling box type device and play PlayStation in another room without a console. It's sort of like how DirecTV has their setup now, with allowing people to watch TV in another room without another physical box being in another room. It's also got, they also discussed the PlayStation Now and the PSN stuff and the Sony stuff. And speaking of the Sony movies, like their and Sony exclusive content coming to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Network, they discussed their exclusive series Powers. And for those of you who don't know, Powers is a very fantastic comic book written by my favorite comic book writer of all time, Brian Michael Bendis, and drawn by Avon Omi. And while I love Powers and I love Brian Michael Bendis, I didn't need to have Brian Michael Bendis come out for 15 minutes and talk about Powers. Love Powers to death, but I didn't need to hear Brian Michael Bendis talk about it for 15 minutes. And to close off the conference, they showed a trailer of Uncharted 4 running in in-game engine footage. It wasn't gameplay footage, it was just a teaser trailer using the game's engine. So I give Sony lots of props for bringing out their big guns. They didn't bring as many exclusives as Microsoft did. A lot of their big games like Arkham Knight, and they showed off Destiny big time. All those games are also coming to other consoles, and while they did look good, they also showed off GTA 5, which is also coming to Xbox One and the PC. So I just wish Sony showed more exclusives and didn't focus so much on indie titles. So while it was solid, it wasn't mind-blowingly awesome, similar to Microsoft's. I actually put it behind Microsoft's conference. Some people are going to say, oh, you're a fanboy, but that's the truth. Now I'm going to get on to EA and Ubisoft's conferences, since they were individual companies doing a conference. And now to talk about Ubisoft and Electronic Arts' conferences. Even though they're not console makers, they did have their own press conferences, and I think they should stop doing that because they weren't very good. Like, Ubisoft was tolerable. EA's was just shit on a stick. And I'm gonna go in on EA, and that seems to be the popular thing to do, but I'm not doing it because I want to be popular. It's just the truth. EA's conference was just really bad, and they didn't offer any real surprises. Pretty much everything they showed, everybody knew was coming out from the jump. Like, it was just the next logical progression from what everybody knew they were going to do. The lone thing I got excited for regarding EA's press conference was the little teaser of Mass Effect 4. And I'm a huge Mass Effect fan, so I can't wait to see that come out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 as well as the PC. But and they didn't even show much in the way of gameplay footage of their games. They showed a lot of, it was very CG heavy, and I think that if you don't have anything to show during your conference, like no gameplay, nothing, like, just don't do a conference. Just make, like, bring your footage to Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo and show it off at their conference. Like, hey, because I know those companies will be more than glad to pimp your stuff at their conference and get that wow factor. I think they could have gotten a better response had they done that and gotten more people excited in their products had they shown it off at Microsoft or Sony or even Nintendo Direct, what Nintendo did during the Nintendo Direct on June the 10th. As it stands, man, it's just hard to get excited for EA's conference. It just wasn't very good. It wasn't very well put together. It dragged, showed no footage. It was just really, really bad, and I almost dozed off a few times during it. I swear on my life that I almost fell asleep a few times. And it was just that bad. And next year, EA either come with gameplay footage, because you did have some games that were interesting, like Dragon Age 3, and the next FIFA. I'm not a soccer fan, but like, I don't like to watch soccer, but I love to play FIFA for some reason. And Madden 15 looks really good in the CG, but I want to see some gameplay. And you didn't show me much of Mass Effect 4, even though I'm excited that the game is coming out. I would have rather seen some in-game footage of something. So next time EA either show it at Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo's conferences, or don't do anything. Don't do a conference, because you're just wasting everybody's time if you're gonna come like that. Moving on to Ubisoft, same message. They showed a lot of games that people are interested in. They didn't show Beyond Good and Evil 2, which I'm kind of mad at because I love Beyond Good and Evil. But they did show more of The Division. Division is looking hype. It's looking great. Can't wait for that game. But unfortunately, it's not coming out until 2015. And the same message goes for Ubisoft. Like, please, please, please show more gameplay footage of your games. Don't rely heavily on the CG trailer. Because while you do have games that people want to play and are excited to come out, if you can't show us a little bit of something, a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, show us a little bit of something. Tease us, man. Give us something to look forward to. Because that's what people want at E3. People want to be excited. They like the sizzle CG trailers, but they also want to see a little bit of what the game is going to be like. And since we're running on these powerful consoles like the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, you got PCs even more powerful with the i7 chip and the AMD 8-core chip. Like, it's ridiculous that you can't show us some in-game engine footage. Make a trailer with your in-game engine footage. Don't use the CG, because we're done with, we're beyond the point where we need CG. This isn't like 1995 and 1996 where Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn teaser trailers are relying heavily on CG, and people are just experiencing that for the first time ever. This is 2014. We have machines that are more than powerful enough to have your in-game engine look very, very close to what CG can produce. So please, stop with the CG. Give us an in-game engine trailer at the very least, because then you can point to that and go, hey, while this may not be game footage, this trailer is running off the in-game engine, and our in-game engine is impressive. So, other failures from both EA and Ubisoft this E3 in terms of the conference. Ubisoft barely gets like a D minus. EA just shit on a stick, F all the way. It was just so bad. And next up is Nintendo. And Nintendo, they did some big things. They came out swinging and they hit a home run. Nintendo came out swinging, they hit a serious home run. And they opened a lot of eyes, including mine. I thought Nintendo was knocking on death's door, but for the time being, death is gonna have to wait, because Nintendo has some major titles coming out, and it honestly gives you a reason to own a Nintendo Wii U in 2015. While they're pretty much relying on the strength of Mario Kart 8 and Smash Brothers to get them through to 2015, but in 2015 they're gonna have some major titles coming out around this time next year. And leading off is a game that a lot of people have been waiting for years. It's not a remake of Zelda, it's a brand new Zelda, and it looked fucking amazing. I cannot wait for it. I'm gonna buy a Nintendo Wii U in 2015 for it, and it looks awesome. I highly recommend you go find that trailer and look at it, because you might cream your pants if you're a chick, and you might jizz yourself if you're a dude, because that footage is just fucking amazing. Another game that I was surprised to see coming to Nintendo console is Devil's Third, which is made by the former director of Dead or Alive. And that is a very big coup for Nintendo. The game has been in development since Itagaki left Tecmo a number of years ago, so kudos to him for finally getting his game on a platform. But it's just shocking that it's a Nintendo platform. It's definitely going to generate some buzz. Whether it's going to be good or not is a whole different story, but the fact that that type of game, given that Itagaki is known for his penchant for violent games and big breasts and all that stuff, it's just pretty shocking that it's come to a Nintendo console. But kudos to him. We saw more Bayonetta 2 footage, which is coming out for the Nintendo Wii U. It's making its long final journey to retail, and it's coming with the first Bayonetta, so you're getting 2 games for the price of 1. Good move there on Nintendo's part. Another game that looked very good, even though I'm not a fan of Smash Brothers, it did look very good. And they're bringing some very big characters to the Smash Brothers universe, such as Mega Man and Pac-Man. So it's kind of funny, because now you have all the gaming quote-unquote icons from the 80s and early 90s duking it out. In one game, you got Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, and Mega Man. That's essentially Nintendo, Sega, Namco, and Capcom duking it out for supremacy in Smash Brothers. It's just funny. It's just really funny. And it put a smile on my face when I saw Pac-Man in that trailer. It kind of made me laugh. So, kudos to them. Another game that is very interesting that is coming out pretty soon is Build Your Own Mario. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Nintendo is finally giving you the tools to build your own Super Mario Brothers game. While these twos have been out unofficially on the PC for years with the Super Hard Mario ROM hacks and all this good stuff, it's nice to see that Nintendo is finally releasing these tools so you can make your own Mario game. I'm interested in seeing what kind of levels that people will come up with, or entire games for that matter. So kudos to Nintendo on that. So as I said, Nintendo, they had a very, very solid E3. Even though they didn't have a conference presence at E3 itself, the Nintendo Direct stuff was very, very big. So my final synopsis is that while nobody's conference was mind-blowingly better than everyone else's, I have to say that Microsoft came out ahead in this conference because they have a lot of stuff coming out that is exclusive to the Xbox One this fall and this holiday season. They have more than what Sony and Nintendo will have to offer this holiday season, so that's going to take a lot of your money, and that was very impressive. Second place, I have to say Nintendo. They came out swinging. They put to rest the essentially the rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. While they did stave off death for a while, they're gonna have to hope more games materialize between now and next summer, because they're essentially riding off the strength of 2 games until next summer when all these big titles come out for them. So I hope they can ride it out, and it's going to be a challenge for them. It really is. Sony's got some really impressive games coming down the pipe. Most of them are coming in 2015 though, which is the problem. You've got Little Big Planet 3, which is going to have the back catalog of Little Big Planet 1 and 2 user-created levels. You're going to have The Order 1886. Drive Club is finally coming out this holiday season, and I'm interested in seeing how that is going to play out. But Sony, in my opinion, they came in third this year, and that's not very often you can say that Sony came in third this year behind Nintendo and Microsoft. They've been second a few times, they've been first a lot, but it's very rare that you can legitimately make a claim to say, hey, Sony came in third place out of the big 3 conferences. I'm not even going to say like where Ubi and EA came in, because let's face it, they were bad, and everybody knows they were bad. So overall, I'm looking forward to a lot of Microsoft stuff. I'm looking forward to what Sony has to offer in the coming months. I'm very interested in the Wii U now. It makes me want to get one for the new Zelda and the Mario tools. And another game that they showed off was Splatoon, and it's a paintball like Team Fortress like game, and that's going to be very interesting. So I want to know what you guys think about the E3, who won, who lost, who showed what interested you the most, what your take on Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, EA, Ubisoft. What did they show that made you go, damn, I need to get that? Or what did they show, or what came off as, damn, they fucked up, they could have did that better? So leave a comment in the comment section below, or if you're feeling creative, make me a video. So this is D-Man for Life, aka D-Mizzle Frizzle, coming at you with the new gaming order quick hit of June the 12th, 2014. Hope y'all all have a good day. Peace out.